In the last video, I welded on the bottom of this door skin on my truck, and anyhow, I finished tack welding it up and ground down the weld as much as possible, and also did a little hammer and dolly work on it to get it straight. It looks pretty much in line for the most part, but I'm gonna do the back side next. I have the inner door panel to put in, and that's going to give it the shape on this lower part. So before I continue on straightening this out, I want to attach it to the inner door panel. Now here's the inside bottom of the door. You can see I did patch up the holes, rust holes in that inner framework. Nothing pretty, but it's structurally sound. Here's the patch panel I have. As you can see, it's pretty big. It goes up, it would cover like 9 inches, but I'm only going to use a couple inches of it on the bottom. That was the bad part. And so I'm going to fit it roughly first, and then sneak up on it and try to get a good fit. I've got my cut marks put on my patch panel now. This is where I need to trim it. This is going to leave me like about a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch extra that I'm going to trim to fit. But here's where those reference marks that I put on the door earlier will pay off. I don't know if you recall, I had put a mark at 9 3/16, which is the depth of this patch panel. So I could measure from that reference mark down to the cut line at any point and know where to cut this patch panel. If you didn't have something to reference and you just started tacking parts together, you're going to get jammed up at the end. Anyhow, I'm going to cut this off now. Okay, that rough cut let me put the panel in place, and this will let me trim it to final size here. I'll mark it on both pieces probably, and trim it, leave about a 30 thousandths gap for welding. And I got to make sure that the outer skin contour is right and everything. And as you can see, this without that bottom, this inner door is pretty flimsy. So that'll give it some shape. Anyhow, I'll trim this off camera. I'll be back. I've got this inner door bottom trimmed up to fit the door itself as good as I can. I'm going to probably just tack it in place on the corners. There's a inner framework that the hinges bolt to, but if you recall, I replaced the entire outer door bottom, and it's hanging free, so it could move quite a bit yet. What I planned to do, I had drilled a couple holes here where I could spot weld it or plug weld it to this frame to capture it. So I'm going to tack it in place and flip the door over. I've got my gauge that I made before for the contour of the edge of the door. I'll flip it over and double check that, get it in position, and then burn in these plug welds, and that'll keep it from flopping. You can see it's hanging free, so it'll lock that in, and you know, I'll just carefully work it around. I may have to take it back off, who knows. I had to put in these weep holes at the bottom of the door. They weren't on the patch panel. Hopefully that'll keep it from having the rust issues it had last time. I'll try to get in there with seam sealer when I'm all done with this. All right. Okay, I've got this tack welded along this seam. Left the ends open. So I'm going to flip it over and use this gauge that I made previously for the outside door contours, and maybe have to tweak this around a little bit to get that contour right, and then I'll tack weld on the edges here, and that'll keep the alignment. After I verified the shape of the door, with the templates on the side there. When I had it flipped over, I tack welded on this part of the door to keep the alignment, and also this plug that kept everything from flopping around. Now I have this area here. This is where the door hinge fits in. There's a pocket. When I was trimming, I didn't get that gap as close as I would have liked, but I'll show you what I'm going to do here. When I weld this part here, I don't want any of the weld bead to get behind here and possibly interfere with the hinge when it slides in. So what I'm going to do is I have a piece of brass about 1/8 inch thick, and it will fit in behind there. I'm going to shim it tight against the back of the back of the door, and I'll go ahead and weld that up. That should leave it pretty smooth on the inside, and I'll be able to use my hinge. This is all welded and ground pretty smooth. I'm still probably gonna put a couple more tacks in here. Now, when I cut this, as you can see, I put it pretty close to that bead that was in the inner door, and that helped keep things straight. I didn't put it so close that it interfered with grinding, but close enough that it kept it rigid and made it easier to hold straight. I've got the flange drilled, and now I'm gonna bend that flange over. Everything looks like it's lined up on the front, so all I gotta do is fold that over and plug weld it. I still have to do the plug welds on this flange, and on the weld here I got a couple pinholes I'm going to finish up welding, and then when I do the body work I'm going to put some short strand fiberglass over that and then bondo it up. It'll be done, and I'll show you the outside. Well, the outside matches my template pretty good on both ends. A little bit off. I still have to do a little bit of body work on that, and also on some of the edges. I'm gonna hang the door back in the truck to check body gap or door gaps, and I may have to weld along the edge, you know, to reestablish a door gap. But it's just regular body work from here. But I think that'll be it for this video. I appreciate everybody coming by to visit me in the shop here, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.